Yo, what is up guys, Ghost here, welcome back to another video, and finally we have some Battlefield here on the channel, although I do wish it was more positive news. An ex-DICE developer by the name of Risible claims that the original Battlefield devs are long gone and that things are going to drastically change for the Battlefield franchise. He has a lot to say here, and I think this is some important stuff to go over, and he was obviously at the studio for a long time, so he knows a lot about what happened with the devs there and how Vince Zampella and Laura Miele came in and really turned things around. So if you're a Battlefield fan and you care about the future of the franchise, stick around for the rest of the video because this definitely concerns you. If you do enjoy it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, guys. I know there's been a lot of Delta Force here on the channel in recent times, but later on this year, the next Battlefield game will inevitably start to pick up steam, and then I will be, of course, back to Battlefield again later on in the year. So most of this is going to be directly quoted from him, and then we're going to discuss what he has to say here. So he starts this post off by saying the Battlefield section from EA's Investors Day has started to generate sparks of hype for the new game. It'll certainly be different, because 98% of the people who made previous Battlefield games have left EA. Let me explain how DICE imploded and this new crew is trying to build things back up. So going back to the glory days of EA, he goes on to explain that Patrick Soderlund, who was at the time DICE's CEO, orchestrated the acquisition with EA, and he was rewarded with a big paycheck and promoted to be the head of all EA game studios worldwide. So he ran these studios out of the DICE office for 14 years, and he was sort of like DICE's guy, and he could therefore protect the studio from EA and stop them from messing around with DICE and whatever they were working on. And clearly, because Battlefield games were doing pretty well, they'd released Battlefield 2, Battlefield 3, Battlefield 4, Battlefield 1, which were all successful Battlefield games. For the most part, EA just sort of left them alone. He says that strong EA leaders protect their studios and weak ones get micromanaged to death, and that is the reason that so many of EA's studios have fallen apart, for example BioWare, Criterion, Maxis, and that DICE has survived longer than most because Soderlund's favour protected them from EA's more intrusive meddling. Let me just say, it's absolutely insane that if you work with EA, you actually have to protect yourself from the publisher coming in and meddling in your product and your company too much. That sounds like a pretty raw deal to me. So the general manager of DICE at this time was Patrick Back, whom a lot of you will be familiar with. He was the executive producer on Battlefield 3 and the general manager during Battlefield 4, and he left DICE. Now this guy says that publicly this was a mutual parting with Soderlund, wishing Back well on future endeavours. Within the studio though, there were actually rumours that Back was kicked out due to inappropriate behaviour. Now what that means, I have absolutely no idea. After that, Soderlund's new pick for general manager was Oscar Gabrielsson, who was of course the general manager when Battlefield 2042 released, and at the time he was most known for being the founder of a studio called Uprise, who were acquired by EA, and most notably they built the Battlelog app, which of course we know from Battlefield 4 and 3. Now he takes over as general manager when Star Wars Battlefront 2 was well into development, and unfortunately neither he nor Soderlund recognized the game's design flaws that ultimately of course led to its incredibly controversial launch. We all know the story with that game. But since he was new, Soderlund was basically able to shift the game to Patrick Back and sort of eat some of the responsibility directly. So Battlefront 2 was the first serious monetary hit for Soderlund under EA here, and this is the first time that EA sort of start to look towards DICE and say maybe something may be going awry. Then of course we got Battlefield 5, which didn't go well here either. Soderlund in that particular title, he took more of a direct role overseeing the game's vision and the execution, and this also happened while BioWare was finaling on Mass Effect Andromeda, and we all know that Andromeda launched to pretty embarrassing reviews, bad sales. It was not a Mass Effect game that really held up the franchise by any shape or form. And so because of that, he doubled down on personally directing Battlefield 5 to ensure that it would be just as big as Battlefield 1's record-setting launch, which of course it didn't turn out to be. He says that in 2018, Soderlund regularly reviewed playtests and tech demos, pulling producers and designers into his office to lecture them on how to build the game the right way. Gameplay physicality, the visceral sense of being physically impacted by the chaos around you, was one of his biggest mandates. The Battlefield 5 team was sent into a physicality push to update games' production values to create a stronger sense of realism. This push took resources away from creating critical path content needed to finish the game. Aspects of the physicality focus are on full display in Battlefield 5's very hated, non-traditional reveal trailer. The trailer also revealed the previously unaddressed disconnect between Battlefield 5's World War II setting and the game's wacky monetized cosmetics. Now, it's important to remember here that Battlefield 5 was the first game to launch after EA's pivot to live service games, and that DICE was told they could no longer sell DLC packs, so good luck getting any of those in the future, guys. I guess that's just not going to happen. And they were monetizing only now via non-gameplay impacting cosmetics, and after Star Wars Battlefront 2's controversy, DICE was afraid of live service games. Now, after fans kind of rejected the Battlefield 5 trailer, Soderlund then gutted the wild outfits in favour of historically accurate but also bland cosmetics, which didn't really sell as well, I don't think, and he also doubled down on the physicality features, trying to position Battlefield 5 as beautiful, realistic, and a return to World War II. At the end of 2018, Battlefield 5 missed its ship date by a month and ultimately shipped a classic, unfinished, we'll fix this in the live service game. And Battlefield 5 went on to become the worst-selling mainline franchise game in history. So 3 flops in 3 years was enough for EA CEO Andrew Wilson, and Soderlund left EA right before the Battlefield 5 launch, and he shortly founded Embark Games, which you will be familiar with for making other games like The Finals. So DICE's internal protector and Oscar's senpai had now left the building, and Oscar dodged the blame by saying that Soderlund had been overruling the studio during Battlefield 5's development. So now that Soderlund had a brand new studio over at Embark Games, 15 minutes from DICE, he started poaching talent. He got DICE's head of content and art, he got the head of operations, the head of R&D, and one of their senior creative directors. Other senior leaders also saw this as a good time to leave, and they went to places like Ubisoft. The new Embark leadership then started hiring their former teams, pulling over tons of artists, game and engine devs, and operation folks. It's worth noting that Embark did not get designers and producers from Battlefield. Soderlund's meddling in Battlefield 5 created bad blood within the core Battlefield team. So that's what happened right before development of Battlefield 2 starts. They basically have a mass exodus of developers, they have a mass change of managers. So now with DICE reeling from this talent attrition and a reduced budget, Vince Zampella and Respawn are the new top dogs in EA's non-sports portfolio, and Patrick Soderlund has now been replaced by Laura Miele. So DICE is told to focus on Battlefield 5's live service while the Battlefield Brain Trust designs the next big game, free from Soderlund's intrusive oversight. The remaining old-school Battlefield crew delivers Battlefield 5's War in the Pacific, while the newer guys iterate on what will become Battlefield 2042. And for what it's worth, the War in the Pacific expansion for BF5 was particularly good, I think. So Battlefield 2042 then launches in 2021 and underperformed, as we know, versus EA's expectations. There are many reasons that it underperformed, and he says here he could write another lengthy post about this, but fundamentally, DICE failed to align the game's contents with what their audience wanted, which is of course 110% true. 2042 also suffered from game engine technical challenges linked to simultaneous development for Gen 4 and Gen 5, so that's like PS4 and PS5 for example. But regardless, 2042 was DICE and Oscar's final chance, and once it failed to deliver, EA cleaned house. And that is of course what we saw happen straight after the game launched. Oscar Gabrielson announced that he was leaving the studio, so as I thought and assumed, he got fired. And we also saw other management there. Fawzi Mesmar, like the Candy Crush guy, I have no clue what he was really doing there in the first place, but he also left. Now, the business people at EA have always looked longingly at Call of Duty and the gazillions of dollars that it makes annually, and then they look at Battlefield and they ask, why can't you be more like that? So Battlefield 2042's performance gave Vince Zampella and Laura Miele their dream opportunity to turn Battlefield into Call of Duty, he says. In 2021, Oscar was asked to leave. He was replaced as the DICE general manager by Rebecca Kutas, a former Ubisoft GM, and at the same time, DICE hired COD's GM, Byron Bede, to join EA as Battlefield GM. And control of Battlefield was then transferred to Byron in LA, and DICE was told that they would join a group of Battlefield studios. EA also at the same time hired Marcus Leto to build a new studio in Seattle called Ridgeline. So apparently the plan for Ripple Effect, DICE and Ridgeline was to build Battlefield like Infinity Ward Treyarch and Sledgehammer build Call of Duty, presumably with one game every year. And then Industrial Toys was supposed to make a Battlefield mobile game. Now, with so many developers already having left, the loss of the franchise control, the Call of Duty conversion plan, and Bede and Leto's attitude towards DICE drove out the remaining old guard Battlefield devs. Alex Grundle, the previous head of Battlefield, went to Embark, and a large chunk of Battlefield creative and production staff formed TTK Games in Stockholm. And we all know, of course, a couple of years ago, Lars Gustafsson, one of the original creators of Battlefield, he left the studio and he went to become the CEO of TTK Games. We don't yet know what kind of game they're working on, but I'm definitely interested to see what they've got cooking over there. So the pandemic and our wild global economy seem to have negatively impacted the original Call of Duty conversion plan. Industrial Toys was closed in January 2023 along with their version of Battlefield Mobile, and Ridgeline never opened post-pandemic, and Marcus Leto seems to have left EA in 2024 on bad terms. So he continues here saying the goal is to build a new Battlefield game every year. I think EA has a roadmap to achieve this, but we won't see the next game in 2026, so they are going to take a 1 year off there. If Bede sticks to his vision, we will get a full-priced main game with limited single-player, seasons, battle pass and live service slop, as he calls it, and a free-to-play mode like Warzone. Wild and crazy monetized cosmetic content is the ultimate goal, and they will push that towards the player base as fast as they can without generating too much negative sentiment. Pay for the game every year and pay for the battle pass and pay for the skins. I bet Battlefield Mobile is on the roadmap, but not this year. They believe they need to repair the brand's reputation by focusing on core gameplay that people want. This means a modern day setting and conquest 24/7. They'll also drop 2042's operators and return to soldier classes. Well, we already knew that stuff. So if you're a Battlefield fan, he says, temper your expectations. This is a new era of the game made by a completely new group of people following a new philosophy. Whether that's good or bad depends on your personal outlook. TTK Games is where most of the old Battlefield talent now works. I know what they're making, but I haven't played it. I can't speak on how close or far it is from a spiritual successor. If you know Embark, then you've probably tried the finals. Beautiful production value and Battlefield-like destruction. So basically, whatever TTK Games is cooking up sounds pretty promising. EA leadership, Wilson, Mealy, Bede and Zampella, all of them are corpos through and through. They want to extract maximum revenue from their players and drive up shareholder value. They make games to make money, not the reverse. So I thought that was very interesting and insightful there. Obviously that is just all of this person's words. I'm not exactly sure who they are, but I don't think you could really make up most of this stuff. It sounds like it could possibly be a disgruntled employee that left on bad terms and sort of wants to throw EA under the bus here and DICE in general. But yeah, this sort of excites me and worries me in equal parts. On the one hand, the possibility of getting a Battlefield game every year, well, that worries me because they haven't even been able to put out games every 2 or 3 years and have them actually be good, functional, finished products. So how can we expect them to put out such a product every year? On the other hand, as a player, and certainly as a content creator, I would love nothing more than to have a new Battlefield game every year and something fresh to go at, something fresh to make content on. As for Battlefield becoming more Call of Duty, that definitely worries me a lot. Battlefield is its identity. I think they really just look at the numbers that other games put out, you know, EA do, like Battlefield, like Apex Legends, and they think Battlefield is capable of getting those same numbers, but that just isn't always the case. Sometimes the first person to get there kind of wins. They gobble up all of the player base, and in order to get those players to switch franchises to switch over from Call of Duty and make Battlefield your main game, you really do have to have some insane kind of hook to go at there. I believe Battlefield already has a pre-hook, which is just the Battlefield formula in and of itself, this amazing sandbox experience. I don't believe you can really truly experience it anywhere else, and as much as I enjoy Delta Force, it doesn't really feel quite the same to me. But I just hope that EA's expectations for the franchise don't ruin it any more than they already have. So guys, leave me your thoughts on this down below. I would be very interested to hear what you all have to say about this. What do you think about the future of Battlefield? For me personally, of course, yes, it is difficult to hold the hype back, and when we start seeing trailers and getting information, of course, that excites me, as I'm sure it does you. But at the same time, I am trying to temper my expectations and not get too over the top excited about the new game, because I am acutely aware of the fact that this could, again, be a massive flop for the franchise. I'm really crossing my fingers that that isn't the case, but I guess we will find out in due time. Leave a like down below if you enjoyed the video, guys. Have a good one. Subscribe for more Battlefield, and I'll see you all in the next video.